Good morning, everyone. Today we are going to be recording a little bit of. Sorry, that angle's not very good. A little bit of Conan the Barbarian, Chapter 1, the first book. These have just come into the public domain. They were suggested by one of our listeners, and I thought it was a good idea. Normally I do these on Twitch, of course, but I've got very, very sick of Twitch. And actually, by the look of this frame, I think I'm going to be a little bit sick of YouTube as well. Hold on. No. Hello, someone just joined us, gave us a like. How are you doing? I hope this is not sideways for you. It might be sideways. Oh, something about these streaming services they hate. Actually, going the right way. I don't know. Oh, it is sideways. All right, hold on. I will turn you up that way. How's that? Is that better? Hello, 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 hello. Okay. God damn, I hate that. I hate that they make me film like this. I like landscape. All right, good. Okay, so we're recording chapter 1 of Conan the Barbarian. That's not what the story is called. The story is called The People of the Black Circle. We'll be recording at least chapter 1. Okay. As usual, we start with the incredibly exciting recording of 20 seconds of silence. That makes it easier for editing. Okay, so here we go. Chapter 1. Death Strikes a King. The king of Vengia was dying. Through the hot, stifling night, the temple gongs boomed and the conches roared. Their clamour was a faint echo in the gold-domed chamber where Bunda Chand struggled on the velvet-cushioned dais. Beads of sweat glistened on his dark skin. His fingers twisted the gold-worked fabric, beneath him. He was young. No spear had touched him. No poison lurked in his wine. But his veins stood out like blue cords on his temples, and his eyes dilated with the nearness of death. Trembling slave girls knelt at the foot of his dais, and leaning down to him, watching him with passionate intensity, was his sister, the Devi Yasmina. With her was the Wazam, a noble grown old in the royal court. She threw up her head in a gusty gesture of wrath and despair as the thunder of the distant drums reached her ears. "The priests and their clamour," she exclaimed. "They are no wiser than the leeches who are helpless. Nay, he dies and none can say why. He is dying now, and I stand here helpless, who would burn the whole city and spill the blood of thousands to save him." "Not a man of Adordia would die in his place if it might be, Devi," answered the Wazam. "This poison—" "I tell you it is not poison," she cried. "Since his birth he has been guarded so closely that the cleverest poisoners of the East could not reach him. 5 skulls bleaching on the Tower of the Kites can testify to attempts which were made and which failed. As you will know, there are 10 men and 10 women whose sole duty it is to taste his food and wine, and 50 armed warriors guard his chamber as they guard it now. No, it is not poison. It is sorcery, black, ghastly magic." She ceased as the king spoke. His livid lips did not move, and there was no recognition in his glassy eyes, but his voice rose in an eerie call, indistinct and far away, as if called to her from beyond vast wind-blown gulfs. "Yasmina, Yasmina, my sister, where are you? I cannot find you. All is darkness and the roaring of great winds." "Brother," cried Yasmina, catching his limp hand in a convulsive grasp. "I am here. Do you not know me?" Her voice died at the utter vacancy of his face. A low, confused moan waned from his mouth. The slave girls at the foot of the dais whimpered with fear, and Yasmina beat her breast in anguish. In another part of the city, a man stood in a latticed balcony overlooking a long street in which torches tossed luridly, smokily revealing upturned dark faces and the whites of gleaming eyes. A long, drawn wailing rose from the multitude. The man shrugged his broad shoulders and turned back into the arabesque chamber. He was a tall man, compactly built and richly clad. "The king is not yet dead, but the dirge is sounded," he said to another man who sat cross-legged on a mat in the corner. This man was clad in a brown camel-hair robe and sandals, and a green turban was on his head. His expression was tranquil, his gaze impersonal. All the characters will be read by other actors, by the way. I'm just narrating this. That's why I'm not putting character voices and stuff like that on. "The people know he will never see another dawn," this man answered. The first speaker favored him with a long, searching stare. "What I cannot understand," he said, "is why I have had to wait so long for your masters to strike. If they have slain the king now, why could they not have slain him months ago?" "Even the arts you call sorcery are governed by cosmic laws," answered the man in the green turban. "The stars direct these actions as in other affairs. Not even my masters can alter the stars. Not until the heavens were in the proper order could they perform this necromancy." With a long, stained fingernail, he mapped the constellations on the marble-tiled floor. The slant of the moon presaged evil for the king of Vendia. The stars are in turmoil, the serpent in the house of the elephant. During such juxtaposition, the invisible guardians are removed from the spirit of Bunda Chand. A path is opened in the unseen realms, and once a point of contact was established, mighty powers were put in play along that path. "Point of contact?" inquired the other. "Do you mean that lock of Bunda Chand's hair?" "Yes. All discarded portions of the human body still remain part of it, attached to it by intangible connections. The priests of Asura have a dim inkling of this truth, and so all nail trimmings, hair, and other waste products of the persons of the royal family are carefully reduced to ashes, and the ashes hidden. But at the urgent entreaty of the princess of Kosala, who loved Bunda Chand vainly, he gave her a lock of his long black hair as a token of remembrance. When my masters decided upon his doom, the lock in its golden, jewel-encrusted case was stolen from under her pillow while she slept, and another substituted, so like the first that she never knew the difference. Then the genuine lock travelled by camel caravan up the long road of Pekshari, thence up to Zaibar Pass, until it reached the hands of those for whom it was intended." "Only a lock of hair," murmured the nobleman, "by which a soul is drawn from its body and across gulfs of echoing space," returned the man on the mat. The nobleman studied him curiously. "I do not know if you are a man or a demon, Kemsa," he said at last. "Few of us are what we seem. I, whom the Kashtiaris know as Kerim Sar, a prince from Iranistan. This book is actually quite racist. We're going to have to remove some bits, but anyway. I am no greater a masquerader than most men. They are all traitors in one way or another, and half of them know not whom they serve. There are, at least, I have no doubts, for I serve King Yezgered of Turan." "And I, the Black Seers of Yimshar," said Kemsa. "And my masters are greater than yours, for they have accomplished by their arts what Yezdigerd could not with 100,000 swords." Could you say the name of the book and the author? It sounds very interesting. It's The People of the Black Circle. I forget who wrote it because another chap wrote the later Conan books. So Robert E. Howard wrote the early ones, the first ones. I think it was Arthur Conan Doyle who wrote the later ones, but I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that. It's very early over here, and I haven't even had my morning coffee. Yeah. Okay. Outside, the moan of the tortured thousands shuddered up to the stars which crusted the sweating Vendian night, and the conches bellowed like oxen in pain. In the gardens of the palace, the torches glinted on polished helmets and curved swords and gold-chased corselets. All the noble-born fighting men of Ayodhya. I'm going to have to do a pronunciation guide for all the other actors, I think, and myself. All the noble-born fighting men of Ayodhya were gathered in the great palace or about it, and at each broad-arched gate the door 50 archers stood on guard with bows in their hands. But death stalked through the royal palace, and none could stay his ghostly tread. On the dais under the golden dome, the king cried out again, racked by awful paroxysms. Again his voice came faintly and far away, and again the Devi bent to him, trembling with a fear that was darker than the terror of death. Yasmina! Again that far, weirdly dreeing cry. Dreeing? From realms immeasurable, dreeing, maybe fleeing? I get most of my texts from Project Gutenberg, which is normally very good, but they do just sort of scan pages and turn them into digital things. And sometimes the old printing is a little hard to read, so it can say things like dreeing and get other words wrong. I'm going to assume that that's fleeing because that sounds right in context. Yasmina. Again that far, weirdly fleeing cry from realms immeasurable. Aid me, I am far from my mortal house. Wizards have drawn my soul through the wind-blown darkness. They seek to snap the silver cord that binds me to my dying body. They cluster around me, their hands are taloned, their eyes are red like flame burning in darkness. Ah! Save me, my sister, their fingers sear me like fire. They would slay my body and damn my soul. What is this they bring before me? At the terror in his hopeless cry, Yasmina screamed uncontrollably and threw herself bodily upon him in the abandon of her anguish. He was torn by a terrible convulsion. Foam flew from his contorted lips, and his writhing fingers left their marks on the girl's shoulders. But the glassy blankness passed from his eyes like smoke blown from a fire, and he looked up at his sister with recognition. "Brother," she sobbed. "Brother." "Swift," he gasped, and his weakening voice was rational. "I know now what brings me to the pyre. I have been on a far journey, and I understand. I have been ensorcelled by the wizards of the Himalayans." Not the Himalayas, the Himalayans. Yeah, he did that a lot in this book. "I've been ensorcelled by the wizards of the Himalayans. They drew my soul out of my body and far away into a stone room. There they strove to break the silver cord of life and thrust my soul into the body of a foul night weird, their sorcery summoning up from hell. I feel their pull upon me now. Your cry and the grip of your fingers brought me back, but I am going fast. My soul clings to my body, but its hold weakens. Quick, kill me before they can trap my soul forever." "I cannot," she wailed, smiting her naked breasts. "Swiftly, I command you." There was the old imperious note in his failing whisper. "You have never disobeyed me. Obey my last command. Send my soul clean to Asura. Haste, lest you damn me to spend eternity as a filthy gaunt of darkness. Strike, I command you, strike!" Sobbing wildly, Yasmina plucked a jeweled dagger from her girdle and plunged it to the hilt in his breast. He stiffened and then went limp, a grim smile curving his dead lips. Yasmina hurled herself face down on the rush-covered floor, beating the reeds with her clenched hands. Outside, the gongs and conchas brayed and thundered, and the priests gashed themselves with copper knives. Chapter 1 complete. Very dramatic. Very dramatic. Okay. I would be carrying on with Dracula, but narrator. But we're waiting on other actors at this point. Dracula is a very strange book, in that it's written without a narrator. There's no like descriptions of passages or anything like that. It's all first person, written by the various characters. So yeah. All right, here we go. Let's scroll back through some comments here. Let's have a look. Thank you so much. It's impressive to watch a master in work of their craft. Thank you for lending us your gift. Oh, that's lovely. Thank you. Ha 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 ha. I don't know what you were laughing at, but yeah, there was some funny old bits in there. My name is Gorilla, the truth behind the making of SBA's Animal Farm. Do it, please. Oh, God. I can do a real quick version for you right now, if you like. Animal Farm started as a full cast recording, but I did the job incredibly badly, and all the other actors' parts just sounded like absolute crap, so I ended up recording all of the other characters myself, which was unfortunate because the actual performances from the other actors were great, but the recordings sounded terrible. I tried to do that old thing that they used to do in like 40s radio shows, where they'd have a soundproof room, then a microphone in the middle of the room, and everyone would just sort of come in and speak their line and then dodge back, and the other actors would come in from different angles and speak theirs and dodge back. And I gave everyone headphones and stuff so they could hear what was going on, but using a microphone is a skill that you have to work at, and there's an assumption thing that happens in my head. I assume that you know everything that I know, and they did not. So unfortunately, their recordings were not usable, which sucks. We had some of our best actors doing that. Jen Speak, who will be in Dracula and is doing one of the short stories that will come up really soon. And she was in Alice in Wonderland very briefly, but she's a very good actor, and yeah, her performance went to waste. And of course, Tim Williams, who played O'Brien in 1984, and the artilleryman in War of the Worlds, and a bunch of other roles in Alice in Wonderland and whatnot, and will also be in Dracula. His performance went to waste. Yeah. It was all pretty terrible, But it came together all right in the end. I was happy with the end product. I just wished I'd been able to use the other actors that I had brought on board. Please do Chapter 11 and Chapter 12 of Animal Farm. Do it. Animal Farm is finished. So I don't know quite what you're asking for there. Any plans for the Count of Monte Cristo? Not yet. I'd have to look that one up and see if it was in the public domain. I think it's a pretty old book, isn't it? Or am I thinking of something else? The Count of Monte Cristo. Not the film. They always bring up the film first. And I have to search for the book. That's very depressing to a guy like me. Let's see, Count of Monte Cristo. Oh dear, it was originally published in 1845. So yes, it's definitely definitely in the public domain. Pretty much anything before 1930 is okay. So I regret to confess that I have never read it. So I don't know much about it. The Count of Monte Cristo is an adventure novel written by French author Alexandre Dumas. Completed in 1844, it is one of the author's most popular works, along with The Three Musketeers. Like many of his novels, it was expanded from plot outlines suggested by his collaborating ghostwriter Auguste Marquet. That doesn't tell me anything about the book at all. That's all right. That's all right. I'll check it out. Yes, short answer. I'll check it out. I'll have a look. Would you recommend reading Dracula for someone who isn't a native speaker and might find the writing archaic? For the most part, it's okay. It's more some of the references and historical setting that you would find difficult, rather than the language. You could read it. You could read it. Or you could wait a year or so and my audiobook will come out. Yeah, it's going to take a while. Let's have a quick look at chapter 2 of Conan and see how long it is. Bugger it. Let's just give it a crap, shall we? A crack. Let's give it a crack. It is getting very hot in here. It's summer in Japan, which is why I'm recording first thing in the morning. No problem, Clara. Glad to help. Do these comments show up on like the live video if people watch it later on? I don't know. They don't on Twitch, which is very irritating. Twitch kind of sucks, right? Like I don't actually like it. It's very annoying. Anyway, okay. Focus, Stephen. We are recording chapter the 2nd. Okay. Another 20 seconds of silence. Chapter 2, A Barbarian from the Hills. Chunder Shan, governor of Peshkari, laid down his golden pen and carefully scanned that which we had written on parchment that bore his official seal. He had ruled Peshkari so long only because he weighed every word. He had ruled Peshkari so long only because he weighed his every word, spoken or written. Danger breeds caution, and only a man wary... Danger breeds caution, and only a wary man lives long in that wild country where the hot Vengean plains meet the crags of the Himelians. An hour's ride westward or northward, and one crossed the border and was among the hills where men lived by the law of the knife. The governor was alone in his chamber, seated at his ornately carven table of inlaid ebony. Through the wide window, open for the coolness, he could see a square of the blue Himalayan night, dotted with great white stars. An adjacent parapet was a shadowy line, and further creneles. Oh dear. Creneles. I'm going to have a little look. Excuse me. Pronounce. Creneles in English. Get my little headphones here. Have a little listen in. I know how to say crenellation. I'm not sure about creneles. Crenels? Fuck. Get stuffed. If you get AI to read your thing, I do not believe you. Emma saying she's quite good. Hurry up, Emma. Krenel? Oh, that's Krenel. That's no good. Crenellation. I know crenellation. All right. I'm going to have to go with the crappy AI reading. I'm not very happy about that. Right. Cranels. That's how it says it. Okay. An adjacent parapet was a shadowy line, and further crenels and embrasures were barely hinted at in the dim starlight. The governor's fortress was strong, and situated outside the walls of the city it guarded. The fortress is outside the walls? That's a bit stupid, isn't it? The breeze that stirred the tapestries on the wall brought faint noises from the streets of Peshkari, occasional snatches of wailing song or the thrum of the cithern. The governor read what he had written, slowly, with his open hand shading his eyes from the bronze butter lamp, his lips moving. Absently, as he read, he heard the drum of horses' hoofs outside the barbican, the sharp staccato of the guard's challenge. He did not heed, intent upon his letter. It was addressed to the Wazam of Vendya at the royal court of Ayodhya. Ayodhya, yeah. And it stated, after the customary salutations, "Let it be known to your Excellency that I have faithfully carried out your Excellency's instructions. The 7 tribesmen are well guarded in their prison, and I have repeatedly sent word into the hills that if their chief come in person to bargain for their release. But he has made no move except to send word that unless they are freed, he will burn Peshkari and cover his saddle with my hide, begging your Excellency's indulgence. This he is quite capable of attempting, and I have tripled the numbers of the lance guards. The man is not a native of Gulistan. I cannot with certainty predict his next move, but since it is the wish of the Devi—" He was out of his ivory chair and on his feet facing the arched door, all in one instant. He snatched at the curved sword lying in its ornate scabbard on the table, and then checked the movement. It was a woman who had entered unannounced. A woman whose gossamer robes did not conceal the rich garments beneath them any more than they concealed the suppleness and beauty of her tall, slender figure. A filmy veil fell below her breasts, supported by a flowing headdress bounded about with a triple gold braid and adorned with a golden crescent. Her dark eyes regarded the astonished governor over the veil, and then, with an imperious gesture of her white hand, she uncovered her face. "Devi!" The governor dropped to his knees before her, surprise and confusion somewhat spoiling the stateliness of his obeisance. With a gesture she motioned him to rise, and he hastened to lead her to the ivory chair, all the while bowing level with his girdle. But his first words were of reproof. "Your Majesty, that was most unwise. The border is unsettled. Raids from the hills are incessant. You came with a large attendance?" "An ample retinue followed me to Peshkari," she answered. "I lodged my people there and came on to the fort with my maid, Gitara." Chunda Shan groaned in horror. "Devi, you do not understand the peril. An hour's ride from this spot, the hills swarm with barbarians who make a profession of murder and rape. Women have been stolen and men stabbed between the fort and the city. Peshkari is not like your southern provinces." "But I am here and unharmed," she interrupted with a trace of impatience. "I showed my signet ring to the guard at the gate and the one outside your door, and they admitted me unannounced, not knowing me, but supposing me to be a secret courier from Ayodhya. Let us not waste time. You have received no word from the chief of the barbarians?" "None save threats and curses, Devi. He is wary and suspicious. He deems it a trap, and perhaps he is not to be blamed. The Kashtarias have not always kept their promises to hill people." "He must be brought to terms," broke in Yasmina, the knuckles of her clenched hands showing white. "I do not understand." The governor shook his head. "When I chanced to capture these 7 hillmen, I reported their capture to the Wazam, as is the custom. And then, before I could hang them, there came an order to hold them and communicate with their chief. This I did, but the man holds aloof, as I have said. These men are of the tribe of Afgulis, but he is a foreigner from the west, and he is called Conan. I have threatened to hang them tomorrow at dawn if he does not come." "Good," exclaimed the Devi. "You have done well, and I will tell you why I have given these orders. My brother—" She faltered, choking, and the governor bowed his head with the customary gesture of respect for a departed sovereign. "The king of Vengia was destroyed by magic," she said at last. "I have devoted my life to the destruction of his murderers. As he died, he gave me a clue, and I have followed it. I have read the Book of Skelos and talked with the nameless hermits in the caves below Jalal. I learned how and by whom he was destroyed. His enemies were the Black Seers of Mount Yimshar." "Asura," whispered Chundashan, paling. Her eyes knifed him through. "Do you fear them?" "Who does not, your majesty?" he replied. "They are black devils haunting the uninhabited hills beyond the Zaibar, but the sages say they are seldom interfere in the lives of mortal men." "Why they slew my brother I do not know," she answered. "But I have sworn on the altar of Asura to destroy them, and I need the aid of a man beyond the border. A Kishtaria army, unaided, would never reach Yimshar." "Aye," muttered Chundashan. "You speak the truth there. It would be fight every step of the way, with hairy hillmen hurling down boulders from every height and rushing us with their long knives in every valley. The Tsaurians fought their way through the Himelians once, but how many returned to Khorasan? Few of those who escaped the swords of the Kishtarias after the king, your brother, defeated their host on the Jumdar River ever saw Secundarum again." "And so I must control men across the border," she said. "Men who know the way to Mount Yimshar." "But the tribes fear the Black Seers and shun the unholy mountain," broke in the governor. "Does the chief Conan fear them?" she asked. "Well, as to that," muttered the governor, "I doubt if there is anything that devil fears." "So I have been told. Therefore he is the man I must deal with. He wishes the release of his 7 men? Very well. Their ransom shall be the heads of the Black Seers." Her voice thrummed with hate as she uttered the last words, and her hands clenched at her sides. She looked an image of incarnate passion as she stood there with her head thrown high and her bosom heaving. Again the governor knelt, for part of his wisdom was the knowledge that a woman in such an emotional tempest is as perilous as a blind cobra to any about her. "It shall be as you wish, your majesty." Then, as she presented a calmer aspect, he rose and ventured to drop a word of warning. "I cannot predict what the chief Conan's actions will be. The tribesmen are always turbulent, and I have reason to believe that emissaries from the Tsaurians are stirring them up to raid our borders." Excuse me. It is so dusty here in Japan. My throat is constantly clogged. It's terrible. Okay. "As your majesty knows, the Tsaurians have established themselves in Secundarum and other northern cities, though the hill tribes remain unconquered. King Yezdegerd has long looked southward with greedy lust, and perhaps is seeking to gain by treachery what he could not win by force of arms. I have thought that Conan might well be one of his spies." "We shall see," she answered. "If he loves his followers, he will be at the gates at dawn to parley. I shall spend the night in the fortress. I came in disguise to Peshkari and lodged my retinue at an inn instead of the palace. Besides my people, only yourself knows of my presence here." "I shall escort you to your quarters, your majesty," said the governor, and as they emerged from the doorway, he beckoned the warrior on guard there, and the man fell in behind them, spear held at salute. The maid waited, veiled like her mistress, outside the door, and the group traversed a wide, winding corridor, lighted by smoky torches, and reached the quarters reserved for visiting notables, generals and viceroys mostly. None of the royal family had ever honoured the fortress before. Chanda had a perturbed feeling that the suite was not suitable to such an exalted personage as the Devi, and though she sought to make him feel at ease in her presence, he was glad when she dismissed him, and he bowed himself out. All the menials of the fort had been summoned to serve his royal guest, though he did not divulge her identity, and he stationed a squad of spearmen before her doors, among them the warrior who had guarded his own chamber. In his preoccupation, he forgot to replace the man. The governor had not been long gone from her when Yasmina suddenly remembered something else which she had wished to discuss with him, but had forgotten until that moment. It concerned the past actions of one Kerim Shah, a nobleman from Iranistan. A nobleman from Iranistan who had dwelt for a while in Peshkari before coming on to the court of Adiodia. A vague suspicion concerning the man had been stirred by a glimpse of him in Peshkari that night. She wondered if he had followed her from Ayodhya. Being a truly remarkable Devi, she did not summon the governor to her again, but hurried out into the corridor alone and hastened towards his chamber. Chanda, entering his chamber, closed the door and went to his table. There he took the letter he had been writing and tore it to bits. Scarcely had he finished when he heard something drop softly onto the parapet adjacent to the window. He looked up to see a figure loom briefly against the stars, and then a man dropped lightly into the room. The light glinted on a long sheen of steel in his hand. He warned. Don't make a noise, or I'll send the devil a henchman. The governor checked his motion towards the sword on the table. He was within reach of the yard-long Zaibar knife that glittered in the intruder's fist, and he knew the desperate quickness of a hillman. The invader was a tall man, at once strong and supple. He was dressed like a hillman, but his dark features and blazing blue eyes did not match his garb. Chanda had never seen a man like him. He was not an Easterner, but some barbarian from the west. But his aspect was as untamed and formidable as any of the hairy tribesmen who haunt the hills of Gulistan. You come like a thief in the night, commented the governor, recovering some of his composure, although he remembered that there was no guard within call. Still, the hillman could not know that. I climbed a bastion, snarled the intruder. A guard thrust his head over the battlement in time for me to rap it with my knife hilt. You are Conan. Who else? You sent word into the hills that you wish for me to come and parley with you. Well, by Crom, I've come. Keep away from that table, or I'll gut you. I merely wish to seat myself, answered the governor, carefully sinking into the ivory chair, which he wheeled away from the table. Conan moved restlessly before him, glancing suspiciously at the door, thumbing the razor edge of his 3-foot knife. He did not walk like an Afghuli, and was bluntly direct where the East is subtle. You have 7 of my men, he said abruptly. You refused the ransom I offered. What the devil do you want? Let us discuss terms, answered Chanda cautiously. Terms? There was a timbre of dangerous anger in his voice. What do you mean? Haven't I offered you gold? Chanda laughed. Gold? There is more gold in Peshkari than you ever saw. You're a liar, retorted Conan. I've seen the sulk of the goldsmiths in Khorasan. Well, more than any Afghuli ever saw, amended Chanda. And it is but a drop of all the treasure of Vendya. Why should we desire gold? It would be more to our advantage to hang these 7 thieves. Conan ripped out a sulphurous oath, and the long blade quivered in his grip as the muscles rose in ridges on his brown arm. I'll split your head like a ripe melon. A wild blue flame flickered in the hillman's eyes, but Chunder Shan shrugged his shoulders, though keeping an eye on the keen steel. You can kill me easily, and probably escape over the wall afterwards, but that would not save the 7 tribesmen. My men would surely hang them, and these men are headmen among the Afghulis. I know it, snarled Conan. The tribe is baying like wolves at my heel because I have not procured their release. Tell me in plain words what you want, because by Crom, if there's no other way, I'll raise a horde and lead it to the very gates of Peshkari. Looking at the man as he stood squarely, knife in fist and eyes glaring, Chunder Shan did not doubt that he was capable of it. The governor did not believe any hill horde could take Peshkari, but he did not wish a devastated countryside. There is a mission you must perform, he said, choosing his words with as much care as if they had been razors. Conan had sprung back, wheeling to face the door at the same instant, lips a-snarl. His barbarian ears had caught the quick tread of soft slippers outside the door. The next instant the door was thrown open, and a slim, silk-robed form entered hastily, pulling the door shut, then stopping short at sight of the hillman. Chunder Shan sprang up, his heart jumping into his mouth. "Devi!" he cried involuntarily, losing his head momentarily in his fright. "Devi!" It was like an explosive echo from the hillman's lips. Chunder Shan saw recognition and intense flame up. Chunder Shan saw recognition and intent flame up in the fierce blue eyes. The governor shouted desperately and caught at his sword, but the hillman moved with the devastating speed of a hurricane. He sprang, knocking the governor sprawling with a savage blow of his knife hilt, swept up the astounded Devi in one brawny arm, and leapt for the window. Chunder Shan, struggling frantically to his feet, saw the man poise an instant on the sill in a flutter of silken shirts and white limbs that was his royal captive, and heard his fierce, exultant snarl, "Now dare to hang my men!" And then Conan leaped to the parapet and was gone. A wild scream floated back to the governor's ears. "Guard! Guard!" screamed the governor, struggling up and running drunkenly to the door. He tore it open and reeled into the hall. His shouts re-echoed along... His shouts re-echoed along the corridors, and warriors came running, gasping to see the governor holding his broken head, from which the blood streamed. "Turn out the lancers!" he roared. "There has been an abduction!" Even in his frenzy, he had enough sense left to withhold the full truth. He stopped short as he heard a sudden drum of hoofs outside, a frantic scream, and a wild yell of barbaric exultation. Followed by the bewildered guardsmen, the governor raced for the stair. In the courtyard of the fort, a force of lancers stood by saddled steeds, ready to ride at an instant's notice. Chunder Shan led his squadron flying after the fugitive, though his head swam so he had to hold with both hands to the saddle. He did not divulge the identity of the victim, but said merely that the noblewoman who had borne the royal signet ring had been carried away by the chief of the Afghulis. The abductor was out of sight and hearing, but they knew the path he would strike, the road that runs straight to the mouth of the Zaibar. There was no moon. Peasant huts rose dimly in the starlight. Behind them fell away the grim bastion of the fort and the towers of Peshkari. Ahead of them loomed the black walls of the Himalayans. Ahead of them loomed the black walls of the Himalayans. Chapter 2 complete. Whoa. Oh, my word. Intense. Got to halfway through chapter 2, then realized that Conan made a showing. I'm voicing Conan. So I had to come up with a voice on the fly. I'll have to re-record all of those lines and give him a proper voice. Oh, boy. It is hot in this little box. I don't know if you see, but hang on, I'll turn off these lights for a second. All right, all of this behind me is basically a big, thick, soundproof quilt that gets incredibly hot in here at the best of times. And the best of times is not Japanese summer, which is terrible. Whoops, I've misnamed a file. Doesn't matter, I'll fix it later. Else. All right, well, we're going to call it there for today. As you can probably hear, my voice is starting to strain. You can only record a certain amount a day. We can see the sweat on you long, yeah. It's pretty hot. And I don't have any hair to hide my sweat. It ran away from me because it was too pretty and I got old, fat and ugly, so my hair ran. Yes, that's my theory. All right. So yeah, I'll do more of this sort of thing. I do hate that the phone has to be up this way, portrait mode, but there you go. Vic rules. Hey, how you doing, Vic? G'day. Vic's a pal from way back. He did some art for an old radio show that I used to watch. Pretty good. Used to watch, used to be on. Yes. It was a great show, actually, the role-playing hour. It was awesome. Anyway, okay, that's it. Thank you very much for coming. I hope you've found this entertaining in some way. Awesome to see you at work. I think awesome to have you here seeing me at work. Yeah. This is the interesting bit. If you want the boring bits, you can go to Twitch and watch me edit. Yay, what a thrill. Okay, so we'll be back sometime in the future. Thank you for coming. We'll see you next time. Bye.